Chair calls the April 2nd Stanley County Board of Education meeting to order. I'd like to welcome all of you here tonight, especially Mr. Chris Miller with SNAP, and I think I saw Dave Andrews come in with the local radio station. Welcome you on board as well. Without further ado, I would like to make one note before we start into the agenda. First off, item 5 on the agenda has been canceled. Presentation by Ms. Ann McClendon. And the second thing is Mr. Chance is not with us tonight, and he was in the hospital in Charlotte, I think. That's where he was going to have surgery. He broke his femur, and he was in the hospital with surgery today, so he'll rejoin us whenever he is able later on. But anyway, that's where he's at, and please remember him in your prayers. With that, Mr. McIntyre.
If you'll please bow. Dear Lord, we come to you tonight grateful for getting us all here safely, Lord, and bringing us all out. We're grateful for the beautiful weather that we got to experience today. And we ask you tonight for guidance and wisdom as we make decisions for Stanley County Schools. And especially, Lord, we come to you asking for healing for Mr. Chance. Please touch him and give him a healing touch, Lord, in your holy name. Amen. If you'll please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
We have a treat on tap for us tonight with the West Stanley Middle School Band, and once they get through performing, we'll take just a brief recess to let them clear the area before we continue on with our meeting. So, Ms. Seaford, do you want to say anything before we start?
I just want to say we're excited for you guys to get to hear our band tonight. This is our 8th grade band under the direction of Miss Amanda Wooten, who does a fantastic job with our band program at the middle school, have a strong connection with the high school. And we're just thankful for her leadership and for the hard work that these kids put in, so we hope you enjoy what they have for you tonight.
start taking to the church.
Yeah.
It's good to see you. Do you guys got the keys for percussion stuff?
Yeah, I wanted to put this in the car.
Here, grab some stuff. Grab one of those tongs.
Okay, I think we can go ahead and continue. Next item is recognitions, and it says Dr. James, but I think someone else is going to be doing this.
That's a tough act to follow. They did a fantastic job. I enjoyed that. Chairman Poole, board members, I'm here tonight as your county athletic director to recognize the accomplishment of several individuals. I've decided that sometimes these folks and their accomplishments go unnoticed. So on a regular basis, I'd like to bring it to your attention which student athletes and which coaches we have being recognized as Player of the Year for their conference and Coach of the Year for their conference, along with any individuals who are recognized at a state level by competing in a state competition such as the North-South Game or the Shrine Bowl. So this evening, we're going to kind of catch up from the fall sports and include winter, and I'll be back in a couple of months to share the spring sports news with you. You may or may not know that our high schools are aligned in two different conferences. So West Stanley High School is part of the Rocky River Conference. That is a 2A conference. And our other three high schools, traditional schools, are in the Yadkin Valley Conference, which is a 1A conference. And tonight we're going to recognize the Player of the Year and Coach of the Year that were voted on by the conference coaches. And what a high honor to be selected as Player of the Year or Coach of the Year by the people that you are opposing on the field or on the court. Our Players of the Year are often juggling very rigorous academic demands and participating in athletics at the same time. I see some of you are parents and have student athletes. You know those late nights that they endure, and they're up and at it again the next morning. So I can't say enough for what our student athletes and their families sacrifice for us to be able to see them use their skills out there on the playing field. Our coys, on the other hand, our Coach of the Years, are often sacrificing time with family. They're juggling lesson planning or other job duties and getting ready for practice and games. And the hours that they put in to their duties is just, they're not paid enough for all the hours that they put in. So I can't say enough things about what they sacrifice. Dr. James, if you'll please join me, I'd like for you to do some handshaking, if you don't mind, please, sir. And for the individuals we're recognizing tonight, if you'll please come forward when I call your name, and we'll just form a line around the front of the board, and then we want to get a quick photo. So I'll start with Albemarle High School. We have Zycoria Tillman was voted as the Women's Basketball Player of the Year by the Yadkin Valley Conference, as well as her women's basketball coach, Coach Eric Davis, was voted as the Coach of the Year for the conference. Zycoria was also selected as the Charlotte Observer All-Observer team. She was among 12 top women's basketball players from all divisions, 1A to 4A, who made that distinction. So congratulations, Zycoria. Next, we have a daughter-father combination, which is exciting to see. Megan Kroll was chosen as our Women's Swimmer of the Year, and her father was her coach. He was chosen as the Women's Coach of the Year. So Gary Kroll and Megan Kroll. From North Stanley High School, we have Bryson Childress, and Bryson was selected because of his accomplishments on the court to participate in the North-South basketball game recently. Let me tell you a little bit about his accomplishments that led to that selection. He had a total career points of 2,197. He broke a record that was established in 1996. Were you even born in that year? Okay. In this game that he played in this North-South competition, he was among the top 10 players in North Carolina that were chosen to play on the North Carolina team. He scored 21 points, 7 three-pointers. Okay, incredible. So congratulations to you, Bryson. Also from North Stanley High School, we have Coach Jennifer Gibson was chosen as the Men's Swimming Coach of the Year. Katie Morgan was chosen as the volleyball coach of the year. Going back to fall as well, we have a couple of football players that have distinctions, and that is DJ Roan was chosen as the offensive player of the year in football, and he will be headed to Lewisburg College in the fall to continue playing for them. And also, Drew Little was chosen as the offensive player of the year. He played in the Shrine Bowl, representing North Stanley High School, and he has committed to UNC Chapel Hill for the fall. From South Stanley High School, we have several to recognize. We have Coach Mike Curley was chosen as the wrestling coach of the year. Coach Carla McSwain was chosen as the women's tennis coach of the year. And Coach Ryan Oxshore, or Coach O for short, was chosen as the football coach of the year. Congratulations to all of our coaches. And from West Stanley High School, we have Abby Phillips was chosen as the women's swimmer of the year. Coach Wes Herlocker was chosen as the women's indoor track coach of the year. West Stanley's our only school that has indoor track. Natalie Allman was chosen as the women's cross-country runner of the year. And Coach Chad Horn was chosen as the Rocky River Conference Women's Cross Country Coach of the Year. So, board members, I am excited to have these folks come before you this evening. Let's give them a round of applause for their accomplishments. Thank you all.
Just like to say that Coach Davis is also getting good at prognosticating basketball games. I think he predicted Auburn would win that game before they did. So your stock has gone up.
All night too.
Okay, next on the agenda is academic accolades by Mr. David Grice from Locust Elementary.
My name is David Grice, and I am the principal at Locust Elementary. I'd like to thank the board and the senior leadership of Stanley County Schools for allowing me to be the principal of Locust Elementary. I'm also, I say that as a principal because I think I have the best job in the world. I also would like to say that as a dad, I have my two children, first grade and third grade at Locust Elementary, and principals never have a bad day, but when you have kind of a medium day, it's always so fun and very nice for me as a dad and a principal that I can walk down to the first grade and I can see my little blonde-headed, beautiful daughter, and I can smile at her, and I know why we do this. And I know that we do it for her as well as the other 435 students at Locust Elementary. So I just want to say thank you as a dad and as a principal for allowing me to serve Stanley County Schools and the good people of Stanley County. We've got a presentation about some of the things that we do at our school. Our school motto is lifelong effective schooling, and our motto is positive work, positive life, positive mind. This was a little bit of our data from our report card for 2017-2018. 435 students. Our attendance rate is very good at 95.6. We were a grade C by the North Carolina rating system. We were reading proficiency 60%, math proficiency 61, science proficiency 67. We had a growth rate that was not where we wanted it to be, at -0.5, but we think with the things that we're doing this year that we're going to change that around and change that around very quickly. One of the first things that we're doing is our data-driven PLCs. We've got a wonderful curriculum coordinator with Ms. Lynn Carpenter. She's going to help and working together improve our scores. We're focusing on unpacking the standards. We're not teaching to the test, we're teaching to the standards. And also professional development and studying the data. And you can see by this picture, you can see when you go into Locust, you can see our PLC room. And I'm a very visual learner, and you can see wall to wall the data that is our school. You can see it, of course, we have the different various programs. We can see the data, RTI stored being one of those, but you can see it on the wall. You can walk into Locust and see that, and that's kind of a wonderful thing. We also try to do some positive things at the beginning of each PLC. We like to share why we teach and what's kind of going on right and what's going on good at Locust, and we do that each Wednesday. We also recognize our staff members at each one of our staff meetings. We have what we call our Locust Star program, and these are some of our staff members who've received the Star Awards. These are for accomplishments they do during the school, during that month. Also, it recognizes their attendance, and we're very proud of our attendance rate at Locust. We've been keeping this data for about a month, and we've been either the lowest or right at the bottom of Stanley County schools. We just think the best thing is to have the wonderful teachers teaching the children. We have wonderful assistants in wonderful substitutes in Stanley County that help our students, but it's always the best to have that professional, licensed, wonderful teacher in the classroom up in front of the kids. And it's been one of the things that we've concentrated on is a positive workplace, a positive mind, and a positive life in order to be there for the kids. And so I think it's wonderful, and that's our STAR program. We also have, this is an idea that we came up with. We have our quote wall in the office. We had a big, long white wall in the office, and we got all our teachers at the first of the year to put their favorite quotes on the wall. And you can see we have a nice picture of a colt, and we also have a few quotes that you can see. Don't give up is one of the quotes, and it's all throughout that wall. So when you come to Locust, you can just walk down and see the wall and all the quotes from the teachers. We also do positive reinforcement for the students. We believe that we want to reinforce that behavior through positive, not through negative consequences, even though sometimes that does work, but we like to do it through the positive. And we have our Colt Card reward, which rewards students each 9 weeks for grades and tardies and also behavior. And we do different activities for them. We also have our Student of the Month, and that's always big, and always the students like that. And we have our news team. This is new to us this year. We do our news team through our Locust webmaster and through our YouTube channel. You can see it. We also try to build our vocabulary through our Tier 2 vocabulary. We have Quotes of the Week. We have weather, lunch, announcements, and our kids really enjoy the leadership opportunities they have by being on the news team. And that's first time this year. We started this year also. It's called Win Time, What I Need. We get volunteers, we get everyone in the building to help as far as targeting learning for our students. And you can see it various times throughout the day. We target what those areas or gaps that the students may need, whether it be reading or math, and they'll go work in small groups with one of these people. And it does seem to be working for us. We do have some after-school clubs. We have our Locust Running Club, which competes in the Stanley County Mini Medley, which we just had a couple of weekends ago. And we also have our book club, which are 4th and 5th graders. We started this, Miss Bailey McGuire started this. It's a book club where they read and discuss different books each Thursday. And we do have two robotics teams. We're lucky, a lot of schools have one, but we had so much interest that we have two. And we have the Moon Predators and the Lego Walkers, and they'll be competing May 4th. And we also have a Battle of the Books team, and they'll be competing on April the 11th in the county. We did invite the Hornets to come, and it's always fun to see the kids interact with Hugo the Hornet. And funny thing, it was a couple of years ago, they do a different program each time when the Hornets book bus comes. And they brought the big, I don't know if you've been to a Hornets game, the big inflatable guy that blows up and he kind of walks around and he can do different things. And he was like being mean to Hugo. That was part of the literacy thing, the dramatic play they were doing. And our first graders were up in arms. I literally had to go over there because they were really upset with this guy going after Hugo. They were trying to protect Hugo, so we were trying to get the first graders not to let Hugo get hurt. But the Hornets have always been a friend to Locust Elementary, and we appreciate what they do for us. This is something we're very, very proud of. This was Colts Who Care. Dr. Rick Hessman was former principal at Locust Elementary and former administrator here in Stanley County Schools. He is now the principal at Bellevue Elementary, and we basically took up Wendy Tucker's fifth grade students. She is a very wonderful teacher, wonderful coach, wonderful person in general, and so they took up donations, and they ended up donating $5,000 for Hurricane Florence relief to Bellevue Elementary. And we were very, very proud of those guys. And we had parents and students volunteer and drove down there in a big truck and took all the, I think it was 40-something cases of paper and then about 40 boxes of other materials that went to Dr. Hessman's school. And we were very proud of those guys. And we've got it made the news, and I don't know how I need to click on this. Oh, hold on. I'd like to show you and this was from the Wilmington News. We made the news, and we were pretty excited about that.
A fifth grade history class at Locust Elementary in Stanley County was researched.
And if you could hear this, he would be saying how wonderful Locust Elementary is and how inspired the leadership of the principal, David Grice. Okay, unmute.
Locust Elementary showed up this morning with 44 boxes of paper and more than 30 boxes of school supplies.
Okay,
In total,
I'm not doing very good on
$5,000
this.
worth of stuff.
I don't see. Okay, well, basically he said what I said, and I did it a lot better. It made the news, and I was betting that I was going to mess up, and I pretty much did. But we're very proud of those kids and very honored that those parents took time off of their jobs to do that. We also, again, this was Wendy Tucker's class, and it became a whole school challenge. The fifth grade students were in school for a total of 1,000 days, and on that 1,000th day, she decided to have the school come together and take up dimes so that we could collect 1,000 dimes. We ended up collecting enough to give $600 to our Relay for Life, which is a big thing that we do at Locust Elementary School. And also that we gave $600 to Team Maddie McRae, a student at West Stanley Middle School. And she came out on Friday and accepted the check from our students, which was wonderful. And so we're very proud of that. We're very proud. Hopefully what we're doing is helping our students in fifth grade see that there's a larger world beyond wonderful Stanley County, and that, you know, they'll see beyond our borders. And this is what we're very proud about too. This is Locust Elementary, our Boosterthon. We raised over $20,000 this year in our Boosterthon. We've done it for 3 years now, and we've raised pretty close to about $60,000 that we've put back into the school. This year, what we'll do is our PTA will put it back into our media center. We saw a need for, we wanted different books, high readability, high interest books in our media center, and to update our collection a little bit. So a lot of that money will be going to our media center this year. Each year they pick something that the the funds will go to, the majority of the funds. And the kids really like it, and it's fun for the kids. And so that's our Booster-thon fun run. And the kids get to do something to me each year. I think the first year they put me on top of the building, and the second year they slime me in front of the whole school. And then this year the big thing is they get to make an ice cream sundae out of me. And they think it's really bad. You know, I play it up that it's horrible and I don't want to do it and I'm not going to do it and I frown and everything else, but it's really kind of fun and the kids really enjoy it. And so they get to see their principal get, you know, plastered with slime or ice cream this time or whatever. So it's a fun thing to do. Also, and I want to say a big thank you to Beverly Pennington, Dr. James, all those in the leadership of Stanley County Schools that helped make this a reality this year. We have a full-time school resource officer paid for with Stanley County Schools and with the town of Locust in a joint conjunction effort. We have Officer Brittany Tucker, who is a full-time school resource officer at our school, and it is absolutely wonderful. As a principal, having that person there, she's made a few suggestions already that have helped our morning car rider line. That if you've ever been around, it can be kind of really, really crowded. She's done wonderful things for us at Locust, so it's wonderful having that full-time officer. And I just want to thank everybody who spent a lot of time to make sure that happened. And also, that's my daughter right there beside her, so I think she's pretty cute. We've had two very wonderful, positive CIA visits from Mrs. Brooks and the teams that have come in. Our PLCs are focused on data dives, unpacking the standards, professional development, and our multi-tier support system. We have leadership teams with me each Monday trying to guide our steps for the week and what we're going to do, and so that we kind of are transparent with the communication. We've got a safe, positive, and caring environment. It's a wonderful school and a wonderful place to learn and to work. And of course, our school resource officer. We've lucky that we've had some teachers and administrators from Indy and Oakboro come and visit us and talk to us. And we've also had low staff absences this year. So we've had a really good year. We think that it's going to be a really positive outcome at the end of the year. And again, I just want to say thank you for allowing me to serve the people of Stanley County as a principal and for allowing me to present to you guys. And I'm sorry the video didn't come off as well as it should have, but he spoke very highly about the kids and about the parents who did that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Grice. You should have gotten copies of the March 5th work session, March 5th regular meeting, March 20th special call meeting minutes in your packet. Are there any corrections or deletions or changes need to be made to the minutes? Okay, hearing none, the minutes will stand approved as presented. Committee reports, Mr. Chance, Ms. Gibson, and you, and I think you're Ms. Watson on that committee. Did y'all meet? Okay. All right, thank you. Facilities, Mr. McIntyre.
No report.
Finance, Mr. Graves.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to give everyone an update. We are in the midst of, if you followed the previous school board meetings, we're in the midst of budget planning, which is perhaps one of the most important things that we do each year here at Stanley County Schools. And I just wanted to share with you a quick update. I had mentioned, at least in the previous two meetings, maybe since January, one of the focuses that we're looking at is the ability to provide competitive compensation for everyone in Stanley County Schools. And when I say everyone, we basically break that down into three categories. The first category, in no particular order, is our central office, which includes our superintendent and all the directors and staff in the central office. A second category includes all of our certified personnel, which includes our principals, assistant principals, and teachers. And a third category is individuals who are paid on an hourly basis. The chairman and I received a preliminary overview of a study that I said that we have been conducting on a payroll analysis, a comparative analysis of our staff compared with other what they call cohort counties, which are surrounding counties, which include Montgomery County, Rowan, Salisbury, Cabarrus, Union, and maybe, am I missing one other one? No, that's it. It was very eye-opening information. The consulting firm that we are working with on that is going to be updating some information for us and gathering some more information and presenting that to the full board at some time in the near future in a public workshop setting, and we'll certainly announce that to everyone. But one of the things that we're doing, and I just want to let everybody know who's sort of been following this, is that the budget process in years past has been one where the county, and I don't say county commissioners because obviously the makeup of the board changes every 2 and 4 years, but generally speaking, the county will go to various department heads and they will present them with a magical number that they come up with, and they basically say, we want you to build your budget around this number. The problem with that is if the number is low, then you are working a budget around a number that is not sufficient to operate your particular department effectively. And that's certainly been the case here in Stanley County Schools, and I have been very critical of previous boards and previous administrations in Stanley County Schools. I have made the argument, and I have been right, that they have constantly been going to the county commissioners with a low ball budget. But that explains why, because they accept this random number that's given to them as a number that they're supposed to work around. So one of the things that our finance committee has been doing is working with the superintendent, working with the chief financial officer to put together a realistic budget. And I want to explain this to people. The budget that we present in the very near future to the Stanley County commissioners is going to be one that is a real budget, a budget, not one in excess. We're not asking for things that are extravagant, but the basics that we need to be an effective school system. Every one of you has heard that the school system, and it's true, is the single biggest contributor to growth in a county. And it's true here in Stanley County as it's true for every other county in the state. So in order for us to be effective, we need to have the money to operate the school system correctly, effectively, efficiently. So that doesn't mean that the county commissioners can fund it, because this is going to be the first year in at least the past 16 or 18 years where they have actually received a real budget and not what I call a fake budget based on some arbitrary number. But what it will do is it will open their eyes, and it will show them how much the school system has been neglected over at least the last decade. So I'm very proud of the work that Dr. James has done, our superintendent, Georgia Harvey, and all of the staff in the school system, including Vicki Calvert. They've reached out to the principals and they've asked them what they need to be effective here in Stanley County. They've reached out to all the directors of all the various departments. And I can assure you this, that the budget that we present to the county commissioners is one that is going to be, for at least the first time in over a decade, a real honest-to-God budget and the money that we need to operate effectively. Obviously, that's going to present a challenge to the new commissioners, the majority of which have only been in office for about 5 months. It was a rude awakening to me and other members of the Finance Committee about just how neglected the school system has been, and it's going to be a real eye-opener to them. So we pledge our support. We want to work with them because, as I mentioned in last month's meeting, the majority of the expenses that we are going to be asking for above and beyond what we've received in the past are unfunded mandates from the state. And we'll talk about that a little bit more when we actually have our budget discussion. So I wanted to give everyone a quick update on that. I will just say that the budget that we are going to be presenting to the county commissioners will be a significant increase over what they've seen in the past. And the majority of the budget is, as it always is, involves payroll. And that is, we want to make sure that we are adequately paying our staff so that we can keep the best and brightest employees here in Stanley County and not have them go to other counties. And I'll end with one final note. Obviously, the economy is doing very well, which makes it a challenge for any business, any municipality, to attract and retain good employees because there's more work out there for people. Unemployment is decreasing. Well, I just recently learned several things. First of all, Rowan Salisbury has seen a great number of teachers leave for other school systems, particularly Cabarrus and Union, who offer higher pay than them and certainly Stanley County. The problem that presents for us is that we already have lost year to date 28 teachers, not because they were retiring, not because they decided that they wanted to become professional fishermen or bakers, but because they went to other school systems for more money. That's the reality that we have. We are losing teachers. We have been losing teachers. We've been losing people in the central office to Union County and to Cabarrus County. Now Rowan County, who is realizing a shortage, is increasing their pay. So now we don't only have to compete with 2 counties, we have to compete with 3 counties. So our budget is going to be based on this reality, and it's going to be an important discussion that we're going to have over the next few weeks, because we have to make sure that we have quality staff in Stanley County schools if we are going to be effective at our job educating kids. So I appreciate your time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I hope that you guys will come out for our finance committee meetings. They're on the school website, stanleycountyschools.org. You can go to the calendar. We're going to have several finance-related meetings and budget-related meetings coming up over the next couple weeks. So please go to that website and come and hear what we have to discuss. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Grace. Ms. Watson, personnel.
Yes, sir. We had a meeting before our board meeting today at 6:15, and I would like to bring something before the board.
Okay.
I move to bring before the board to accept the recommendation of a sign-on bonus of $2,500 for middle and high school math and science teachers, and also EC teachers of all grades. We have other counties that are doing this, and so we've got to compete with that too, like Mr. Graves said. They will be getting $500 at the beginning of the school year, and then the rest of the money at the end of the school year.
I'll second for purposes of discussion.
Don't need a second.
Oh, we don't need a second for that? Oh, it came out of the committee?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay, the motion is to offer a sign-on bonus of $2,500 for math and science teachers, and also the EC teachers of all grades, in the amounts of $500 at the beginning of the year, $2,000 at the end of the school year. Is there any discussion?
I have a question, Mr. Chairman. I fully support this, and I will vote for this. We received a presentation earlier today, as I mentioned in my remarks, from school efficiency consultants, where we noted that there were a number of different areas where neighboring counties were offering bonuses. And so I was wondering if maybe we should roll your motion into a discussion, if it's something we could vote on potentially next month, because I think we may want to add to that, or no?
I'd like to address that. We want to be able to make a decision on it tonight because, as Ms. Calvert presented to us in the personnel meeting, there is a job fair that's coming up at UNCC, and it's a great job fair for we find a lot of great candidates. Recently, she was at Appalachian for another job fair, and there were 2 surrounding counties that were offering sign-on bonuses, actually Anson and Montgomery, for a little less, for $2,000. So to be competitive, we want to offer $2,500 and be able to take this to UNC Charlotte.
Okay, thank you. And I know that one of our board members, I believe, has a grandchild who's in a school that has had a math class that has been helmed by a substitute for the entire year, which is completely disgraceful. So I certainly will support this.
Any further discussion or comments? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed, no. Motion carries. Anything else, Ms. Watson? Thank you. Policy, Ms. Crump.
No report. Mr. Chairman, I will say that we will be reporting quite often in the future. We're about to go through an exhaustive effort of a very comprehensive revision of our policies.
I know the next year is going to be busy for you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Crump. Legislative resource, Ms. Gibson.
I do have several things, and Dr. James, I know that you might allude to these. House Bill 79, the academic calendar alignment with the local school boards and community colleges, passed 110 in the House. Now it goes to the Senate. House Bill 266, the annual school report where schools will receive 2 separate grades, one for school achievement, one for school growth, passed 105 to 5. Now it goes to the Senate. House Bill 354, modifying the weighing the school performance grades. The formula for school performance grades would change from 80% school achievement and 20% growth to 50% each. However, the school performance grade would be measured with a 10-point scale. That passed, but then House Bill 362 was filed. School performance grades would be based on the permanent 15-point A through F scale. However, the overall school performance would be 80% school achievement, 20% growth. That passed 105 to 6. Senate Bill 397, the LEAs would be granted a waiver for the K-3 class size requirement if there's a shortage of qualified teachers or inadequate classroom space. House Bill 457, restore master's pay. House Bill 524 asks for additional funds for school nurses. Senate Bill 424 asks to fully fund school counselors and psychologists. House Bill 315 would transfer the adoption of school textbooks from the state to the LEAs. House Bill 377 reduces testing. This was passed by the House Education K-12 Committee, referred to the House Rules Committee last Tuesday. The bill replaces the EOGs for the 3rd through 8th grade through the assessment model that would administer 3 interim assessments throughout the school year, I guess much like our benchmarks. The ACT or other recognized assessment would replace end-of-course tests for grades 9 through 12. And then also, Dr. James, I have been reading where a bill has been filed and it has a lot of support to hire our retired teachers without it hurting their retirement or their benefits. So I hope that certainly passes. So those are the things I have. Dr. James, you may have some more and allude to these that I went over.
Just as a point of interest, that would be something similar to what the +1 they did a few years back.
Yeah, I thought about that too, and I'll.
That was something they did when the times were good, and when it got lean, they.
But then with that +1, didn't it have something? It had some clauses to it where you still couldn't go over a certain amount of time or days and things like that. I remember some teachers who seemed like they were there 4 days of the week, but they weren't there a 5th day or something. But this, I'm hoping this, it sounds like this has a lot of backing by some powerful people in the General Assembly. So I hope that, and that will certainly address your shortage because they're talking about really paying these math, science, special education teachers, social workers, but these people that we are having trouble, and it's not just us, all across the state, finding and hiring and retaining. So I really hope that this is something that passes.
Ms. Gibson, could I ask a quick question? Could you go back to the bill about the textbooks? Could you restate that for us?
There is a Senate Bill 424. No, there's a House Bill, 315, that would transfer the adoption of school textbooks from the state to the local, to the LEAs. But I think that would mean then that the LEA would have to fund, am I correct? Like Dr. James with that, the funding, the LEA would have to, come up with the funding of that with textbooks, where before the state has given that funding for textbooks.
Well, I think the initiative is to try to push everyone towards digital, which started about 7 years ago, and actually a reduction in the board. We've had this conversation in Finance Committee. The fallacy of that is digital online materials are renewable each year. The textbook is a one-time fee. So actually the cost of going digital is about 4 to 5 times as much as a textbook, but yet we cut the textbook fund by about 70%. So we sort of keep being pushed into a corner with materials. I guess Pinterest will always be around, but I don't think that's quality material.
I'd like to ask one, well, actually, go ahead and finish your report. I have a question.
Well, there is, and Member Graves mentioned this, and just for the general public, a lot of this data doesn't always become transparent. But across the state of North Carolina, there's actually 753 long-term subs sitting in our classrooms for the lack of qualified teachers. So that estimate for next year is going to be over 1,000. So there are some things being put in place, but as Member Graves has said, there's been a lot of things that have pushed the cost of education down to local communities and local county commissioners. And I know we're both on the same page, and I've asked our county commission chairperson together with the other 100 counties and start going to the General Assembly, because the state constitution calls for the counties to fund buildings and upkeep of those buildings, while the state funds curriculum and resources to teach that curriculum. But last year, for instance, we received graciously from the county commissioners, they could have done less at any given time, but they gave us about a 6.5% increase, which is $600 and some odd thousand. But here's the caveat to that. The state of North Carolina increased retirement costs and insurance, so at the end of the day, we were $300,000 further in the hole at the end of the year than we began. And so, as Member Graves has said, we keep pushing that can down the road. Every time we have a reduction, it ends up being people, not buildings, not resources, people. So we are the largest employer in Stanley County, so we continuously are reducing the number of teachers we have in our building, and that increases class size, which we know is not best. But there is an announcement tomorrow. I have no idea what it's going to be, at 9 a.m. by Mark Johnson, State Superintendent. Phil Berger is the Senate Majority Leader. And also Horn, which is over the Education Committee. And I can tell you Greg Horn has been a blessing this year in that committee, and Tillman are going to make a huge announcement. I don't know what that is. The last time I went, I got a free meal, but I'm still trying to figure out what the announcement was. But it was a free dinner, and it was paid for by a private philanthropist, so the state taxpayers didn't pay for it. So, yes, we're in a quagmire when it comes to budgeting, and at some point we have to say enough's enough for the state pushing down what is their responsibility to fund. I will tell you that this state had the Leandro case, which is an international case. It's going to set the bar, and it basically in the state of North Carolina, very few states have this. Every child has a right to a sound basic education. So the operational definition of the sound basic education is what ended up in the court system. 9 counties sued the state for inadequate funding, and that's been going on for about 12 to 15 years now. And there actually is a commission, West Ed. I've met with them several times with several other superintendents. Stanley County is part of that. And we supposedly by the end of June will have a ruling. And you can, Member Graves has already pretty well told you what it's going to be, is we're going to be grossly underfunded. So then we have to decide as a state, are we going to fund education? I will tell you, while I used to do corporate work, we can say Amazon didn't come to the state for many reasons, but I'll guarantee you that the quality of education in our state is a big determinant on who you're going to attract to end up in your state as a corporation. They went to New York. Why do you ask? If you look up states, New York is about the only state in the country that has a rating, an education rating of A. And if you look at their funding, their pupils get funded $22,000 per pupil. We're at $8,500. So in the future, if we're going to attract industry, we're going to have to fund our students to provide them equitable access. And I hear it that our county's not equitable, but folks, let's just face it, our state's not equitable. So we have poor counties that cannot produce the same amount of local funding to give every child the same quality education. So yes, if you move to a Charlotte or a Wake or a Union, you're going to have more money spent towards your education because of their tax base. So that's what we have to keep in mind as we move forward on a budget. And again, I'm a fiscal conservative, so I'm looking for every penny I can find under every rock, and I'm still finding a few rocks. So the board, I can tell you, that was one of their edicts. Let's be cost effective in everything we do. And as we work towards this with our finance committee, we also have a study on how efficient we are and if we're over budgeted or not, because there's always that misnomer in every county I've been in that the school system's fat and happy. I encourage any of you, you can sign up any day to come and spend a week with some of us. And after the 70th hour of being with us, or 80th, they might find out, Georgia, that we do put in a lot of time. So we value the taxpayer's dollar. We're going to work hard for you, but please understand that we're not bloated. We don't have a lot of extra help. And I think every member on this board can attest that we burn the midnight oil.
Mr. Chairman, I just had one, maybe something we could do, and I don't know how we do this, or if it requires a motion or it's something maybe for the committee. But what would be great, I think, is that we have a legislative update. I know that the majority of the county commissioners don't ever hear this. Could we maybe ask the central office to send an update, maybe Glenda, if you could work with them, about these unfunded mandates? Because, you know, part of it is being aware of what the state is doing to us. Because ultimately, we can't raise taxes, we can't generate revenue as a school board. It's on the county commissioners. So if the county commissioners see month after month what the General Assembly is doing, I think that would help. I don't know if there's something we can do there to create a process where every month we update them after our meeting, but I think it would be very helpful. I know they'd appreciate it.
I just see that as including that in the network. That's what this is, Legislative Resource Network. So, Ms. Gibson, we'll leave that to your discretion, how you want to handle that. Okay, you have anything else? Okay, yeah, okay. Next item on the agenda is staggered bell times, and I think the word was out that we were going to vote on this tonight, and we probably should as far as the time frame is concerned, but I had committed that we would do a public hearing on this before we actually took a vote. But we did have Mr. Scott Denton is back with us tonight, and he's sort of here so we can finish up. The last meeting we were having on this, the chair was in an ill way as far as how the chair felt. It was awful. And I sort of maybe cut it a little bit short, and the board didn't hang me for it, but I felt bad about it after the fact. But I wanted him to be here tonight in case any board member has any additional questions or comments, or if he has anything extra, or Mr. Lambert, either of you have anything that you would want to bring to us that maybe you didn't think about last time, or any suggestions based on our last meeting or whatever. But if you have anything at all you want to share with us, and what we'll do is at the conclusion of this, of the meeting tonight, we'll try to settle on a date for us to have a public hearing. But you won't need to come for that. Go ahead.
Thank you for having me back. I first want to say the band was outstanding. That band was as good as some high school bands I've heard. So you're doing something right here in Stanley County Schools too, and I want you to know that. So the last meeting we had, we did have some discussion about bringing up another option that would actually push back the times for elementary school to dismissal. And we've submitted those options to you all. I'm sure you all got those. It does require, and the reason we didn't have that structure to begin with, because one of our charges was to change as little as possible. So we had, as you recall, option one was keeping all the high schools and most of the middle schools, and we've since adjusted the Albemarle Middle back to the same start time as the other middle schools. It was keeping all those the same. And so with the directive from our last meeting, we went back to the drawing board a little bit, and option 2 now has an earlier start time for high schools and middle schools, and it allows the elementary schools to then start earlier and dismiss earlier. So I want to make sure that we made that point.
Can you state what that is publicly, just for everyone? What those new times would be
So the new
publicly?
time, the option 2 times would be, high schools would be 7:20 to 2:35, middle schools would be 7:15 to 2:20, or 2:20, or 7:25 to 2:30. Currently, they have 2 start times that are staggered by 5 minutes. And then the elementary schools would be 7:15 to 2:10. 4 elementary schools would be on that schedule, and then 8:30 to 3:25. There would be 6 elementary schools on that schedule. Now, what this does do is it does narrow down in the afternoons the runtime window. Remember, we had this concept of the amount of time in between dismissal needed to run the buses. The mornings won't be a problem because the high schools can cover the morning routes for the elementary schools that are on the second tier. So we'll have plenty of bus drivers in the morning, won't be a problem. The afternoons, you may have a different driver in the afternoon depending on whether that high school bus can make it on schedule or not. Less of those buses in the afternoon can make it on schedule, so it will require some creative thinking on behalf of the transportation department to get those afternoon routes to work. So you may have some TAs that have to drive in the afternoon. They probably won't be needed in the morning. And that's a good thing because they can go to class, they can get their day started, and it won't be necessary for a lot of those folks to drive in the morning. The afternoons, you'll have a lot more school-based personnel that will need to drive in order to make that work.
So Scott, we added, I think Mike and we had a committee meeting. I don't know if we reached out to you that day, but we actually gave the teachers 3 options for the elementaries that were starting early. That was 7 o'clock to 1:55. That would be for the early start schools. Then 8:30 to 3:25 for the schools that were paired with them, the other 6 schools. So the other one we presented was 7:15 to 2:10 and 8:45 to 3:40. Then option 3 on the survey was 7:30 to 2:25, and the other 6 schools would be 9 o'clock to 3:55. And I think the public sentiment and the feedback we received is 9 o'clock was too late to start and 3:55 too late to get in. So in the survey of the staffs in those 10 schools, the overwhelming majority picked 7 o'clock to 1:55. Second place came in as 7:30 to 2:25. So that was part of the survey. And also the number one thing that we keep saying, and somehow it's got spun that it's about the cost, and that's the least thing we're concerned about. We're worried about student safety. We actually have 15 bus drivers. We may be up to 16 now that are missing. And student safety was 52% of the survey, making sure that we could effectively provide that at the bus stop. So the other questions, of course, we had the staggered bill survey went out to all schools, and we had about 260 some. And the other one we asked, if to eliminate this condition, would you be willing to drive a bus? Overwhelmingly, people said no. And here, 94%. So we actually have about 360 some odd licensed people in the county with CDLs. And we can't get 86 bus drivers. So, again, our main concern, my main concern as a superintendent, because of the world we live in, is having the kids stand at the bus stop in the morning not knowing whether they're going to get a bus or not. Actually, this week, I commend the principal at West Stanley High School. She's already sent out a Remind 101. There'll be limited bus service at that school for 2 days because of nobody to drive the bus. There was only one other question. With the limited budget that we have, what would you do? Raise driver pay. We did look at that. I can tell you this, to raise pay, we're looking at $1.5 million, and you still would take home about $80, $90 more a week. What we keep hearing from drivers that we surveyed is the fact we don't have benefits. Health insurance, of course, is in that, and retirement. And they'd much rather have that than the number of hours. That makes up for, the hours makes a lot more money than trying to give a $3 an hour raise. And of course, stagger, the overwhelming majority put stagger the bus routes and put the savings we have left towards teacher supplements, classified supplements, and bus driver pay. So those were the questions we put out, and again, had about 270 odd responses to that survey. And those 10 schools, somewhere in the midst of about 450 employees. So for a survey, that was a good response. We left it up for about a week, communicated it several times.
Dr. James, can I ask you a question?
Yes, ma'am.
With these times, are we banking minutes? Like, you know what I'm talking about? Are we banking some time here
We
to the day? We adding minutes to the day, banking time?
our calendar is actually set up on 1,060. Well, it's 1,025 we're required by law, but we're actually 1,060 is what we're going, and in that is built our days that we're out. So we're built on time, not on number of days. So when we lose an instructional day, of course, the difference, do the math, is you're getting 6 hours a day is what we call it, a school day, not 8. So we reduce 6 hours off of that each time we're out. So this year we actually, because of flood, hurricane, which is unusual, so we did have flooding. So we actually, before we ever got the first bad weather, we had exhausted our days. So right now, if we had to take another day, we would have to either go Saturday school that week, or we would miss that day, or take Memorial Day. And I'm sure this board, as long as I, would not want to touch Easter break.
Okay, so I am understanding then 6-hour day. So with these times, we are adding some minutes to the day. We are banking, such as 7:15 to 2:30.
Well, and actually, when we say 6 hours, that's if we can only count instructional time. We can't count recess in our elementary schools, or lunchtime, or pep rallies in the high schools.
And you already have how many days built into the calendar, Ms. Calvert? So we're already gonna miss some of those days? Or is that basically just for snow or anything else? Okay, got you.
So I guess what I was getting at, and of course this is a question for you, Mr. Denton. Is there still any way to tweak these times, even 5 minutes? And I know that you have to have that amount of time between each school with the buses.
Ms. Gibson,
Yes.
could I piggyback off your question before you answer it? So in our last meeting, it was asked, could we do a 7 and an 8:15 to get the start time for the second round of elementary schools down closer to the original start time? And I didn't see that on here. Was there a reason you didn't have 7 and 8? Because just to refresh your or everyone's memory, what you said is that in the afternoon we would have to pretty much keep the separation the same, because buses have to go pick kids up in the afternoon. It's a lot more difficult to compress that time. But you noted that in the morning we could potentially compress that time from 7 to 8:15. Is that not possible, or is that still possible?
So, I guess this is my personal feeling. A 7 o'clock start for elementary is really early. And even though some of the teachers had indicated they were for that, you're talking about putting kids on a bus a lot earlier for a 7 o'clock start. So I chose not to include it because I'm not aware of any elementary schools that start at 7 o'clock. I think 7:15 is probably the earliest you're going to find any school starting in North Carolina. And I just didn't think that would be a wise choice to recommend. So now, can you do it? Yes, you can. But I just felt like it was going to. Again, we're talking about safety of students, and you don't want to put kids out at the bus stop that early.
Right, and that's very valid, and I totally understand. I've heard a lot of feedback stating the same thing from teachers and parents, saying, "Hey, that's super early." But the reason that we were looking to that was we wanted to make sure that we could avoid having any families have to go and get early morning daycare that weren't already doing it. That was a big factor. We did not want to put a burden, financial burden on those people. So let me ask the second question then. For the people that would start at 8:30, because we'd be going 7:15, 8:30. So it's still the same difference. We're just changing it from 7 to an 8:15 to 7:15 and 8:30. So that's cool. But what time would we be getting the kids to the school that were arriving later? In other words, are we going to be able to avoid the problem of the early morning daycare with that time schedule?
So my understanding is that Stanley County Schools would allow drop-off up to 1 hour prior to bell time.
And we're
School buses will not drop off until 30 minutes prior to bell time is when they start dropping off.
And we're currently allowing drop-off at 7. I asked the principals to give me their drop-off time, 7:25 to about 7:40. So when you look at that time and you go to 7:15, you're only talking about 15 minutes difference. So there's not a huge difference there. Shift workers typically start at 7 o'clock. So they're already doing something with their kids. Either an older sibling is waiting for someone that goes to work at 7 to watch them to get them on the bus, or they're dropping them off at morning care. Of course, the issue revolves around the schools that start late at 8:30. And what we've offered to do is provide some additional supports there, let you drop off at 7:30. So that would be an hour that we would be available. So that would actually put it back to where they're currently dropping off anyway.
I have another question. This may be for you, Mr. Denton. It may also be for you, Mr. Lambert. So in this process, we're going to hire 4 transportation specialists. What is the reasoning behind the fact that we need 4? Are we looking at the fact we have 4 high schools and the feeders that are there as to the fact we need 4? And I guess the reason I'm also bringing that up is Barris County has 7, and we look at the amount of students in that county, so they have 7. I think 1.5, maybe 2, deal solely with the exceptional children's transportation. That's all they do is with the exceptional children. So then you're looking at, they have 5 with the amount of children and school and the vastness of that county and so on, but yet we are asking for 4. I would just like to hear why we need 4.
Mr. Lambert, you want to address that? Because I know he did some work in contacting other counties to discuss the transportation coordinators, and arriving at 4 was.
Sure, and Mr. Denton's correct. I did check around with other counties, and the thing about transportation in every county, each county is a different size, have different number of buses, different tier times, and so a position may, in one county, have all these job requirements, whereas in County X, it could be different. So we basically came down with recommendations from other counties based on the fact that right now, the daily supervision of bus drivers is handled at each school. So we're taking 20 positions and narrowed it down to 4. And we chose 4 so we could have 1 coordinator for each high school district.
Is that a possibility to reduce that to 3? With savings, then we have money that we can then put into hiring bus monitors, or we can give more to our teachers and our classrooms. Is that a possibility? Or would that be a hardship and defeat the purpose?
In theory, because it's all brand-new process for Stanley County, because we're unique from any other county, as every county is, it seems like it would be a hardship on transportation to require that much more responsibility with no more addition of staff.
That's something that we'd have to assess at the end of the first year to see where we're at with that. I understand where you're coming from, but it may with kicking something off the ground, if we go with this, I wouldn't want to cut myself short till it got rolling smoothly.
And I can tell you, just from experience, that what these people will be doing, they'll have more than a full-time job to
Okay.
keep up with what's going on every day. In Durham, we had 16 people that were assigned full-time to look after bus drivers, work with principals on discipline, handle camera issues, and make sure they were always working and pull video, and that they'll have a lot to do every day, in addition to making sure a bus driver's on every bus, which is almost a full-time job these days anyway. But I'd recommend staying with 4 and reassessing after the first year to see if there's anything that, and we want those folks to have their bus license too, so they could be a sub-driver in the worst of times. We don't want them driving on a regular basis, but we do want them to have their bus license so that they can be a substitute if push comes to shove.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Chairman Poole.
Just for my benefit here, like I say, I was sort of out of it last meeting, and I'm sure you addressed this. EC buses, how are they going to be affected by this?
EC buses,
And I've had that question posed to me by someone.
there are currently 3 EC buses that we operate, correct? 9, actually. It's 9 now, okay. So we did not plan to alter the EC schedules at all. We're going to still have 9 EC buses. They're still going to cover their routes. It really depends a lot on where EC programs are located every year, and that's why I encourage our transportation folks to meet with the EC people this time of year, every year, to assess what's happening for next year and look at where program placement is, and that way you can hopefully strategize on the best ways to get EC kids to and from schools. In any district, you don't have programs for some kids only one location for that student, and you'll have a student that lives on the other side of the county and one that lives on this side of the county, and so you got to decide where you're going to locate things, and everything can't be centralized in one place, unfortunately. So we didn't see we didn't really figure in a lot of changes to EC routes and drivers because we know that they have long routes already.
And those children don't adjust too well to severe changes.
Many times they don't do well to change, particularly autistic type children.
If there's anyone else have any last minute thoughts? If not,
Chairman Poole.
yes.
I did want to answer, I done some quick math. It's not Common Core math. It's the old pen and pencil. So actually, we get 6 days, so we're earning 6 days with the current schedule. If you shave off 5 minutes of the schedule, we lose 3 days. So just 5 minutes a day less, we lose. Of course, if we had 5 minutes, we get 9 days that we would have for bad weather, etc. So that 5 minutes does make a big difference. I just wanted to do the rough math, but I want to let you know that. Thank you.
And Ms. Gibson, you asked earlier about could we move schedules by just 5 minutes a day. The answer is yes, you can, but what you move is going to affect something else. So anytime you make a change to one schedule, it's going to affect another school, particularly when you got them staggered like that. So you have to keep in mind what makes sense for one school may not make sense for another school, or you do have to change that schedule, more than one schedule, to make it work. Does that make sense?
Chairman Poole,
Yes.
may I say
Sure.
something? I sent some questions into Dr. James about some things that I was hearing in the community. One of the questions was, would our surrounding counties that are already doing this do this all again? Have you talked to those people and have you had conversations? And Dr. James said overwhelmingly, actually it was all of the superintendents that you have spoken with, correct, have said that they would do this and don't know that they could even get by without doing this. If you want to expand on that, but I have one question after that.
Yes, Johnson County actually, and you worked in Johnson County?
No, I didn't.
You didn't work in Johnson, but it's
Durham,
Superintendent
Wake,
Renfro, and actually talked to him about 38,000 students, and sat down and had a long conversation with him at one of my meetings. Also talked to the Cabarrus superintendent. I'm in a group with about 11 superintendents. Actually, our cohort has the most number of students in the state of North Carolina. Charlotte, Meck, Union, Cabarrus. So we all get together once a month, and it is a good opportunity for that network for me to throw out questions and say, well, have y'all done staggered? What were the issues? Would you do it again? And the superintendent at Cabarrus said, it's not an easy process because there's winners and losers in everything you're going to do. It does take time to settle in. But if I had to do it again, absolutely, because we could not find bus drivers. And actually, we keep losing bus drivers to Cabarrus because of that. Union County, they actually have their county segmented in like 9 segments, and they have some different start times for each one of those segments. So theirs is a little bit more difficult to look at and understand, but all the ones that I talked to said it's one of those inevitable things because, again, Member Graves said it, we're in an economy where people can go find a job that pays more money or more benefits. We've lost some teachers. We lost a good person out of our academy over to Michelin because he'd been on the list of Michelin for like 5 years. So when they pulled his name, well, I mean, he left us, and that hurt because he had a good rapport with the kids. So Johnson County, Wake County's done it. Talked to their superintendent. She was an interim actually in several classes with me. And she said absolutely they couldn't run Wake County without staggered times. There was no way with their budget and the bus schedules. Guilford County's another one that runs some staggered times. So all of them said it's not an easy thing. It's never easy for a board to disrupt what we already have, but change inevitably happens. And as I've told, and I'm not, I have to be unbiased. I work for the board as a whole, so I'm going to take your direction, whichever one it is, and I'm going to be happy to do it. But at the end of the day, currently, I worry about the 700 kids that are affected this year that do not have a consistent bus driver.
Ms. Crump, I think another way to ask that question is can you go back to a single-tiered bus schedule for all those counties that have more multi, and the answer is no. It's impossible for those counties to move backwards. They have to acquire buses, they have to find drivers. The expense would be astronomical for them to do that, and then they couldn't find anybody to drive them. So it's impossible to move backwards, I think, and that's another way to look at that question.
Okay, thank you. And I do have one other question. One of the things that came up, I came to a couple of the informational sessions here, and I was trying to write down some of the questions that I was hearing coming from the parents. Enrichment keeps coming up because if we have students that are going to be dropped off early, what kind of enrichment would they have? What would that look like? And as a parent who has 3 children in the system, I would want to know what that looks like as well, and I would want it to be very specific. When I asked this question, I realized that it's hard to get specific in a general way because it's going to have to be tailored to the school because every school looks different and every demographic at every school looks different. And so what the students need, some do utilize that morning time more, some will be dropped off more, and all of that will have to be tailored to that school. But while we're talking about that, can you, Dr. James, address a couple of the things that you've talked with me about what some of this enrichment would look like?
Well, one of the things we have is a 21st Century Learning Grant, and we are struggling to get the numbers in that grant. And like any federal grant, if you don't meet your numbers, you no longer get the grant. So you can lose the grant as quick as you can get the grant. So we're getting ready to be put on probation if we do not get additional kids in the grant. So what Susan Brooks and I have talked about with if the board decides that we go this route, then we can offer the 21st Century Grant an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon. So that means kids that are getting home 5:30, 6, well, actually we dismiss about 5:30. It's 2 hours a day is what's required in the grant, 4 days a week. So we could actually get kids home earlier. And actually I had a board member call me one night and said, hey, there's a bus out at 6:30. And I went, yeah, on Monday we started the grant. And they're like, oh yeah, I forgot all about that. So it would definitely get our kids, for those schools that we could do that at, we could get the kids home earlier. The other thing we thought about, we definitely want to be a good community partner, so we would reach out to some of the enrichments. YMCA has always been a great partner, and he's always willing to step up and do some enrichment activities. And you and I talked about whole child learning, and I would definitely, the dance studios, I heard loud and clear that it may impact them some. I would definitely reach out to them and look at what we could do, because the savings with this, we can reinvest some of that money to provide additional services for kids. And let's just face it, I would say that anytime we have them in a structured environment with a licensed teacher, I think that's probably the absolute best environment. That's not saying anything negative against daycare centers or anyone else, but we're held to a different standard. So we would make sure that same standard applies. We wouldn't have it as a babysitting service. So we would work with our schools to actually come up with different genres for those schools. I know we've branched out into a lot of STEM activities that are good hands-on things that kids can do. So We would try to tailor that to each school, and of course, we would require the staff and principal to help make it successful. But and when that question was asked too, I went back and put pencil to paper. It's only an additional 30 minutes. And so it sort of kind of bothered me when I looked at some of the options, and it looked like we were going to be there. They're dropping off 30 minutes early now, so it would be an additional 30 minutes. When you push it out to an hour and 15 or an hour and 30, then I get a little concerned that we would be able to. So I think with allowing him an hour, I think we can do some good enrichment in an hour. Absolutely.
Great. And just to tag on to that, I'm so sorry, Mr. Chairman. I think that it would be good to make clear that those people that would be providing the enrichment, any TAs or teachers that would be asked to do this, it would have to be a voluntary thing, and of course they would be compensated for that. Okay.
Chairman Poole, I'd like to make a couple final comments if you don't
Sure,
mind.
go ahead.
You mentioned earlier in your leadoff comments that time is of the essence, and I agree with you. You do need to make a decision as quickly as you can, particularly if you decide to go with high schools earlier, and we have to find drivers for morning routes and different drivers for the afternoon routes. It's going to take some work over a period of time to figure all that out. So I encourage you to go ahead and make a decision.
We're gonna float some dates here at the end of the meeting, and I'm looking at trying to get this resolved next week with a meeting next week. So I understand the time is of the essence.
A couple other things that I heard at the last meeting we had were paying the TAs to drive instead of giving them comp time. I think that's a really good idea, and I would encourage you to consider that when you make your decision. And I think good things have come out of this conversation. The fact that, and I lost my train of thought, the daycares. Transporting students to the daycares is a wonderful idea. You get to count those students and get paid for that. And currently we're not doing that in Stanley County. So I think that's a great idea. So the conversation that the community brought forward, the conversation and questions you've had have generated a really good discussion around this whole issue. And it's not just about staggered start times, it's about some other issues too. And I think you have a chance to make a really impact in a lot of different areas. So thank you for having me, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, and Mr. Lambert, for working on this, and for your patience with us, because we're trying to consider all angles and aspects of this thing as we work through it. But thank you very much, and we will try to get to a resolution as early as next week on this. But we will, with that, thank you for coming, and we will discuss this date at the end of the meeting, because we've got 2 or 3 other things we have to decide on dates for too. So. With that, Mr. Poplin, do you have curriculum? No report. Ms. Calvert.
Mr. Chair and members of the board, I'd like to draw your attention to the personnel agenda. Section 1 requires no action. It's for information. And section 2 requires action.
Do we need to pull A under 2?
You might.
No, I'm just messing with you. I'm sorry.
I move we approve section 2.
Motion by Ms. Gibson to approve section 2. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, those in favor, do what? You got something else to pull?
Yeah, just section 2 in general.
You want to pull section 2? Yeah, you can do that. Okay, we're going to pull the whole section then.
Okay.
All right. I'm sorry, Ms. Gibson. I'll give you the floor when we come back out. All right. I was just going to do one, and you want to do the whole thing. All right. Get back to my agenda. Okay. Auxiliary service, Ms. Harvey, I know you're working on the budget faithfully, but nothing at this time. And we're going to try to get a date set for that here in just a little bit too. We have one person signed up for public comments, Ms. Jennifer Layton.
Good evening. I'm Jennifer Layton. I work for the Stanley County Health Department, and my son is a student at Millingport Elementary School. I did attend the second forum that you all hosted, and I do appreciate that you hosted time for the parents as well as pastors as well as after-school programs to speak on their concerns on this busing proposal. I'm also very, very grateful that this board is asking questions tonight, because I was very, very concerned when it was presented that it was a mess. So I feel better about it. Ms. Gibson, I had the same questions you had, because when we write grants for the health department to serve the community, you start small and you scale up. You don't start big and then scale down, because it's very difficult to do that. The amount they're offering to pay a transportation coordinator is what I get paid to do 3 probably full-time jobs at the health department. So you always start small and scale up, just as a piece of advice. With a master's in public health, we look at data all the time. We look at quantitative data as well as qualitative data. And sometimes qualitative data tells you more than the numbers could ever tell you. And the day after the forum, I was in a meeting with Dr. James and Mr. Poplin, Holly Carter, the lead school nurse, I think Leanne Johnson, the lead social worker, and Dr. Sarah Moore from Monarch. And we were discussing an actual grant to provide services to students, which are going to be critical going forward, considering the opioid crisis on a national level. And there's a comment that struck me so profoundly that I think that you all need to hear it. And I don't know if you felt the same way, Mr. Poplin, but to the point that I can't sleep. I'm very concerned about it. So Dr. Sarah Moore referenced going into the schools and conducting, and Dr. James, you may have to correct me, because it was a whirlwind meeting with lots of numbers and data and figures and conversations. So, and I'm also working on other grants too, so bear with me. She was discussing going into the schools and I guess doing some field work with students to determine what their key stressors were. And I always find this interesting, because when I go into the schools to teach lessons, I ask some similar questions. And I'm always amazed when students are like, I'm so stressed out. And you're like, but you're not paying bills and you're not having to juggle these massive schedules and get your kids to and from places. So can you please explain more? And she said there were 3 themes that emerged from those conversations, 2 of which make total sense to me. The 2 that were common sense are testing scores, right? We're always, because we're obsessively testing per state regs. And then they were also concerned about relationships. And then she said the 3rd theme, and again, Dr. James, if I don't get it correct, please correct me. The 3rd theme, there was a significant difference between low-income students and middle and high-income students, or families. And she said the low-income students never referenced having a future. They don't see themselves having a future. And I hope that hits you as hard as that hit me. These kids don't feel like they have a future in our community. And we're constantly talking about we want to invest in our kids. We want them to get as much education as possible, whether it's vocational or college level or otherwise, and come back and reinvest in our community. But what that told me was these are children that don't feel like they're being invested in. And I'm not talking about dollars. They don't feel supported. And that is devastating. Those are the same students that will become teenagers and young adults that have higher risk of suicide. We have some of the highest rates in the state. Those are the same students that will have the highest risk of becoming substance users because they feel completely isolated. And I know Sheriff Crisco in the back can echo that sentiment, because it's what they deal with every day at the jail. We talk about this pretty regularly. And we talk about dollars and cents too. But that was so significant to me. If I was a student, and I am a product of Stanley County Schools, and I'm very proud of that, and I'm proud that my son is a part of your system. If I was a student and I felt so isolated and I didn't have that support, who would I turn to? Who would I ask for help? And if I didn't feel supported, what does that mean for me? I'm going to flounder, and I'm going to get lost in the shuffle. So again, we have some of the highest suicide rates in the state. We've had those for years, but again, in Stanley County in 2018, we were quadruple the state rate for overdoses, and 70% of those people were uninsured. These are the kids we're talking about. These are the kids we are talking about. These are the kids we have the power to have some of the biggest impact of their lives and completely shift the direction of their lives. And I thought that was really interesting. And again, back to qualitative data, I thought, well, I didn't hear teachers speak up at the forum, so let me go ask some teachers some questions. And so I value your input as well, Ms. Crump. So I asked teachers, you know, how do you feel if these schedules are changed? And similar comments came through. They felt like they weren't really being considered. And they said, you know, I'm still going to be expected to come to work at the same time to get ready for school day, maybe provide some before school care, and maybe you guys are finding resolutions to that, and that's good. But then I'm going to teach all day until 4 o'clock, and then I'm going to have to stay after school to grade papers, do lesson planning, and I have children in daycare, so I'm not going to see my kids either. And I said, so how would you deal with that? And repeatedly they said, many of us are already looking at leaving the school system because we don't feel supported. So do you see how it's a trickle effect? It's a domino effect. It's reverberating through our entire system from the children all the way to the top. When you have a spinal issue, it starts in your feet and it just travels up through the neck, right? So it was significant to me to hear those comments. And I don't want, I'm trying to be brief because that's not my strength in life.
Thank you. I was going to say, we'll probably let you run over 3 minutes right now, but it's interesting what you're having to say.
Yes.
And you, if you could wrap it up,
yes.
We would, you're more welcome to come back to our public forum.
Yes, and I'm more than happy to meet with anybody one-on-one with all kinds of data and things like that. I'm just saying those are things that I would like for you to consider. The qualitative aspect is critically important because it's very telling. Don't just look at the numbers. You have to consider the qualitative pieces as well. You have to couple the two together when you're making decisions. But that's all I wanted to add. But I appreciate that you're having thoughtful conversation tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Layden. Okay, Superintendent comments?
Thank you, Chairman Poole. Of course, again, we appreciate all the input. Do appreciate the leadership of the board. It has not been a hasty decision. We're still in process of trying to decide what's best. So nothing's been predetermined. And that's one thing that we pride ourselves on, I think, is trying to get input from everyone involved. No matter what we do, it affects someone. And yes, agree with you 100%. Children are trauma. I don't know the answer to that. I do know that additional support services with trauma-induced counselors would be wonderful. I hear that maybe that budget's going to be tripled this time at the state level. Beverly Pennington and I have already had a conversation about trying to reach out and do some things different with our counselors because, again, but I would say that all too often children of trauma would rather be with a caring adult. So typically, and unfortunately, sometimes that's our school staff. I got a rude awakening. My whole career has been in at-risk schools, inner city schools, and just a different genre of day treatment programs, etc. When I walked into East one day and saw the assistant principal or the instructional specialist rocking a child, that took me back and made me think, wow. And her comment to me was, she can't learn until we reset. And that reset had to happen 3 or 4 days a week because what occurred at home. And unfortunate, there was an old African proverb, it takes a village to raise a child, and I believe Hillary Clinton said that one time, and I wasn't a big supporter of her, so I didn't really like to comment. But besides that, I had to reflect on it in my life and realize it does take a village to raise a child. We adopted a child that was a abused child at 3 years old, and trust me, I learned over many years it takes a village to raise a child. So we respect that, and I'm glad that our staffs reach out, and we definitely want to put an undue burden on them, so we appreciate all your input. I will say, that being said, we did lose a student Monday to bacterial meningitis. Got to talk to the parents. Was a juvenile, so I won't mention any names, but another rude awakening. As a superintendent, it's a sad day that when a 15-year-old loses his life. So I would ask you that you would pray for that family. Beverly and I both reached out and had several conversations, so again, they do need our prayers. Do want to thank the West Middle School Band for their performance, done great, and David Grice at Locust, great school out there. I went out one day to visit David and seen a whole table waving at me, and a little blonde girl went, I went over to the table. She said, "Hey, mister, your name's Jeff." And I said, "Yes, it is." And I said, "So what do you need?" And she says, "What exactly do you do around here?" And I said, "Are you another principal?" And I said, "Well, actually, I'm your principal's boss." And the little boy said, "Ooh, mister, have I got something to tell you?" So I said, "Really? Let me sit down." So it was funny. And we started counting, students started counting the seats, and I'm like, something's up. And the little boy said, "You know what? You need to talk to our principal about getting 10 seats at a table so I can get 2 more of my friends here when we eat lunch." And I said, that will be my top priority. So kids are great. So again, appreciate all the things that our principals do and all the people out in the schools and even our community support. It takes all of us working together, and I'm pretty excited about the fact that we can reach out and start looking at some grants for the whole child, because just sitting in a class with reading, writing, and arithmetic, we've gone way past that. And actually, another statistic I threw out in the grant meeting, Bill Daggett is a huge education researcher, works for the Department of Education, and does worldwide studies. And unfortunately, you were talking about the opioid crisis. About a year ago, we were sitting in a class with him, and he said, "Guys, for every 5 live births, 2 of them are going to be born chemically dependent." So think about our society that we have coming forward. So it is pertinent that we get support systems wrapped around students of need as quickly as possible. I was also the director of pre-K in Montgomery for 5 years, and sad to say, there are no services for young kids, or very limited, and that's where we got to start. We can't wait till they're in middle school before we go, "Oh my gosh, we got a problem." It's grown for 6 or 8 years before we get there. So thank you again for all you do. Thank you, Chairman Poole.
Mr. Graves.
Thank you, Chairman. I certainly want to extend my best wishes to Member Chance. I think there's a movie called Unbreakable. I think he's unbreakable. he's at least trying to push the limits. So we certainly extend our best wishes to him. The West Stanley Middle School, I'll just tell you real quick, when I was in elementary school, I played the clarinet, and I thought I was very good. And I had a nemesis in the elementary school band. Her name was Tammy. I will not mention her last name. But I gave up the clarinet, and she did not give up the clarinet. And she actually plays for the New England Philharmonic. And my mom, who, not just because of my mom, but also knew I was the best clarinet player, said, just think if you hadn't given up the clarinet. The reason I mention that is because these kids were better than I was at the same age. So if they keep up, if they persevere, they could all end up in a symphony one day. Trust me. So that was outstanding. That was, we have a lot of people come and perform for us, and I'm surprised that every single month that I am just surprised at how great they are, because you think, well, kids, well, they're not going to be. Every single presentation that we ever get is just phenomenal, and tonight was no exception with them. So I want to congratulate Amanda Wooten, I think her name was, the director there. She did an outstanding job. The kids are phenomenal. If they put on a concert, I would go to it and actually spend money. So I want to thank Sheriff Crisco for coming out. We don't always get to see our sheriff, but I'm glad you came out, and all of your deputies and SROs. We certainly appreciate them. So thank you for coming out. Chris Miller from the SNAP and Dave Andrews from WSPC. I appreciate you guys coming out, and really, I think stepping up the coverage of Stanley County schools, it's really difficult to get information out, and you guys have really stepped it up, and we appreciate the work that you guys do, because we're only going to be able to improve if the people in the community know what we're doing. So thank you. And also it helps hold all of us accountable, not just on the school board, but all of the elected officials in the county. I want to congratulate the Winter Sports Award recipients. I'm sure some of them will be mentioned by name by some of my fellow members up here, but that was just fantastic. A couple of them, their accomplishments statewide were super impressive. David Grace for his presentation, thank you so much. And I want to mention Jennifer Layton, because I always love, there's a couple people here that have been here for numerous meetings, and I encourage people that I talk to please come out and come to these meetings and actually get involved too. As I mentioned last month, I'm proud to be part of this board. I know the hard work that this board is putting in that often goes unnoticed. We genuinely care about making the absolute very best decisions. I think we're holding ourselves to a higher standard than previous boards did, and I want to be held to a higher standard, and I want our board to be held to a higher standard. I appreciate all the comments that she made, not only in the public, in our public meeting that we had, but also tonight, and it's absolutely very important. And when she mentioned the fact about children, particularly in the lower income, not ever talking about their future, it's absolutely true. I've had a lot of experience with children, very low income children, and as sad as it is that many of them feel like they don't have a future, the great news is that for people that care, and when you engage with them, it's like flipping a switch. They will instantly, it's a huge responsibility, because they will, as soon as they see that there is a future, they don't want you to abandon them. And one of the things that she mentioned to me, and it goes into why the budget is so important here for us getting a handle on the budget for Stanley County Schools, is because we have to attract businesses. It's not just kids, it's teenagers, it's people that are employed by the school system, people that I know very well, and I won't mention their names, but their kids, they're worried their kids are going to go off to college and never come back to Stanley County because there aren't employers here that are paying what they can make elsewhere. I was in California for a week. I was visiting a tech firm out there. They're all fighting to pay people $150,000 and $175,000 and $200,000 because that's what they get. Wouldn't it be nice if we had that problem here in Stanley County? And guess what? We have more to offer than they do out in California. We have a better quality of life. We have a better cost of living. There's no reason that we shouldn't be bringing businesses into Stanley County. Union County was Stanley County 20 years ago. I have friends there. It was farms. Now they're bustling, they're booming, they have a huge tax rate. It's because you have businesses there and people that are being paid good wages and they're paying higher taxes so they can do what we need to do here in Stanley County. So thank you very much, Jennifer, for your comments. And I'll leave my comments with this. And it all comes back to this. Numerous discussions that we've had tonight have all been about the state pushing down unfunded mandates to the local level. I'm glad I'm not a county commissioner, because if I was a county commissioner, I would have to try and figure out how I'm going to grow Stanley County without raising taxes, because everybody's cut to the bone. The only thing that we have going for us is a good economy, so we've gotten more money in. But I'll tell you what, we're going to have to do more, and it's all about investing for the future. So I look forward to working with them and the rest of the folks here on the school board and in the school system to truly stop kicking the can down the road for Stanley County Schools and actually turn things around. And I know we can do it, definitely. So thank you very much, and thank all of you for coming out tonight.
Ms. Crump.
I want to just say a couple of comments about two of the coaches that I saw that came up here. Congratulations to all of them and the students for those accolades. The coach, Michael Curley from South Stanley, I know he's not here anymore, but I'm telling you what, he is fantastic. And I know he got a coach award for wrestling, but he's actually by default is the soccer coach at South Stanley High School this year. And what he's done with that group of girls has been amazing. We've struggled over the last few years. We've had a lot of talent, and I don't know what he does, but it's magic. And they all shout out that they're family, and it's that kind of camaraderie that he has created that has brought them to a third in the conference placement this year. And I'm thinking that with all these other coaches that were sitting up there with these awards for Coach of the Year, they probably all have a good story like that to back them up, and probably 10 more on top of it. But it's really a pleasure, and it's wonderful to have such great leaders in our county. I would also like to just say about the staggered start, thank you for all the work to our central office and to Mr. Scott Denton and all the people that have gone, looked at this from every single angle. Thank you for listening to the questions of the people. Thank you for the surveys, and thank you for hearing us again tonight. One teacher that I talked to, and I've talked to many, was concerned and said, well, we hear this is just already a done deal. This is just a done deal, and we know y'all are just going to go ahead and pass it. And I think that some of those comments and some of the negativity that I've heard is just based on fear of decisions maybe that have been made in the past without great care to what maybe teachers would think of this, or administration, or people are fearful of change. And so our effort here is to make sure that we raise the questions, that there are as many answers to these big questions as we can get, and that they're good answers. And what I said to him was, right now, I was at a 50% on whether I wanted to pass it or not. This was several weeks ago. But I'm confident, I'm hoping that in a month we're going to have it ironed out, so that we can have a yes, because I would like to see this happen if we can make sure that everything is ironed out. And lastly, I'll keep this brief. Ms. Layton, thank you for your comments. I do appreciate that very much. Speaking of qualitative data, you offer a lot of value to what you have said. And so I would love to have more conversation with you sometime, maybe lunch.
McIntyre.
First and foremost, thank everyone for coming out tonight. And for the sake of time, I won't repeat, all the congratulations and recognitions, but we're very proud of everyone, our coaches and our players, and we love seeing the presentations by the schools, by their principals, as well as the middle school band. That was absolutely wonderful tonight. Thank you to our teachers and our principals who are always faithful at coming out. I believe some of our principals must be Baptist, because you sit in the same seats every time. But really, thank you guys for coming out. It really means a lot to have your support and to see you guys every night. And lastly, I would just like to ask for you all to keep my mother-in-law in your prayers. She goes in tomorrow for breast cancer surgery. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McIntyre. Ms. Watson.
I also would not go through all of that, but everything tonight was wonderful. The band was great. I'm with Mr. Deaton. He said they were really good, and they were really good. Also, all the awards and everything, all of our students that perform and do all their things on the ball fields and in the gym and all that, our coaches, very, very proud of all of that. I would like to thank Dr. Mann for allowing the father that had been gone for a year and 2 months to surprise his son this last on Monday. It was in the paper, and it was just wonderful to see Dylan run to his dad. He had not seen him for a year and a half, and that's just something that is touching. And the article in the paper was really, really good. And I do thank you, Dr. Mann, for doing that. Also, all of you that are here, thank you for coming. I thank all of our principals, our teachers, everybody that's connected with Stanley County Schools. Thank you for all that you do for our children. Thank you.
Ms. Gibson.
Certainly, I want to echo the part about prayers for the families that are grieving, and prayers for Jeff Chance that he will recover from surgery with a broken leg, and for your mother-in-law, Mr. McIntyre. It was fun listening to the West Stanley Band. Congratulations to all the sports and the players, the coaches. It was really fun watching Zycoria Tillman, if you didn't get a chance to watch her this year at Albemarle High School. That girl can flat out play some basketball. So she is great, and shout out to her coach with Eric Davis. I've watched Bryson Childress since he was little, probably in diapers, but my husband holds the ball camps, and from the time Bryson, I think, was started in second grade. My husband was just like, you won't believe this kid. I mean, you just will not believe this kid. And so we knew that he was going to accomplish great things. I really enjoy listening to the principals and their presentations. Everyone that's presented so far, and it was very interesting with Mr. Grice tonight. And I love the fact that they have their full-time SRO. Thank you to our administrators that are here and our central office staff that are always here. And Ms. Layton, thank you for what you do, certainly in our community, and thank you for your comments. I appreciate those comments. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Gibson. I have been known to be very long-winded in past years on this board, and I'd like to thank this board for making me do penance. That's okay. It's okay. I've had my say. So, first off, I wanted to say one quick comment about the staggered times issue. And I have purposely, when we started this whole process, to try to not get the board way out ahead of the public on this. And I think the public has been accessing the information as we have accessed it. So I hope that has built some understanding and trust, whether you agree with whatever decision we end up at or not. We have tried to be mindful of feelings in the public, and everyone sitting at this dais has been a parent at one time or another, so we understand somewhat the concerns of children or parents having children. I want to run some times by you if everyone's got a calendar on your phone or access to a calendar. Is Monday, May the 8th, that's next Monday. Is that date open for everyone? April. What did I say, May? I'm sorry, I'm thinking about next month's meeting. This is April the 8th. Is that open for everyone? Okay. That's a Monday the 8th.
Chairman Poole, is that for the public?
That's here's my intent for that is I wanted it to be a twofold meeting. We want to have a report from the East and Central principals, and we were going to do this on the 9th, but I think Mr. Brooks is going to be away at a presentation with the superintendent on the 9th, so that's why I was looking at moving back to the 8th. But it's going to be a two-pronged meeting. One to have Ms. Smith and Mr. Brooks do a presentation to us, giving us their take on the feedback they got from the public on the tiered system. Second part of it would be, and I don't know which one of these I might do first, but the second part would be to have a public hearing on the staggered times. And once the public hearing is taking place, if y'all choose to vote that night, that was fine or whatever. But that would be about a week away, and whatever we're gonna do, we need to go ahead and make a decision pretty quick on it. What about Wednesday of that week? That would be the 10th. Is that date open for everyone? I know that's a church night, but 10th. That's Wednesday. Wednesday would be the 10th. Do what? Wednesday or Thursday.
What about this Thursday? Oh, no.
You're not going to be available on the 11th, Thursday the 11th, Dr. James? Thursday the 11th? Well, we're going to have to fit some dates in here because I was looking at the 11th for doing the budget meeting for the entire board. Okay. Let's so you can shift that for Monday? Okay. Let's, Ms. Miller, if, I would like to do that in this room if it's free that night, because in case we have a larger crowd, I want everybody to have access to sit down. Check and see. Let's do that let's, I don't know how long the principals will need, but, let's start at, if everybody's okay with starting at 6 o'clock. I don't like to start meetings that early, but if we start at 6 o'clock, and if this room is open, we'll have it here. If not, we'll do it in the staff development room. Okay? All right, so that's the Monday the 8th. Okay, now let's go to Thursday the 11th. That's, is that the one you're tied up, Dr. James? 7 o'clock. Can you be back at 7? We can start at 7, and Mr. Graves, since he's the finance chair, can hold court till you get here, I'm sure. Okay, so you're good with that then, 7 o'clock? And I promise you, once we get through this spate of meetings, we'll get back on an even keel, and we do get July off, so to help atone for some of this. Okay, Monday the 8th at 6 o'clock here in this room. If this is not available, it'll be in staff development. Thursday at 7, the April 11th at 7 o'clock, and that's staff development's fine for that. Okay, now we need to determine a joint meeting with the commissioners, and we can run these dates by. Hopefully, it'll work. Some of them will work for them. If not, they can shoot something back at us. I'm looking at either Tuesday the 16th, or Wednesday the 17th, or Thursday the 18th. You can't do which one? Thursday? 17th, Wednesday. Okay, Wednesday. All right, how about the 16th or the 18th?
16th?
Tuesday and a Thursday.
Or do we need, the only reason, do you want an extra day or two to be able to work on some of the documentation?
That gives you,
Every day helps.
that gives you from this 11th till the next week to do your finishing touches. Okay.
I think we should do the 18th because the draft is due on the 12th. So that would just give us another day or two
Okay.
to work on the documentation, I think.
Pretty good with the 18th then.
Is that cool?
That's a Thursday. Thursday the 18th? Okay, now that's assuming that date works for them. Yes, that's for meeting with the commissioners. Okay, let's leave it this way. If you could contact them and say the 16th or the 18th at 7 o'clock. And last time we did a joint meeting, we did it in here, was just setting some tables up in here. Okay, has everybody got those dates? The 8th, the 11th, and the 16th or the 18th? 7 o'clock on the second two, 6 on the first. That out of the way. Our regular meeting will be Tuesday, May the 7th at 7 p.m. in this room here. Chair will entertain a motion to go into closed session for personnel matters under North Carolina General Statute 143, 318.11A6. Student matters under North Carolina General Statute 143, 318.11A1, and attorney-client matters under North Carolina General Statute 143, 318.11A3.
Move to go into closed session.
Motion to go into closed session under those aforementioned statutes. Do we have a second? Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Please take a 5-minute recess en route. Call the open session back to order. Ms. Gibson, you have a motion.
Yes, I move that we approve Section 2.
Motion to approve Section 2. Do we have a second? Second from several directions. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. No opposed? No? Motion carries. Motion to adjourn. Do we have a second? Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? No. Motion carries. Meeting is adjourned.